Welcome back to The Quest Within. If you'll recall, last month, I spoke with Pierce, aka Ludaloon Studio, about themes from Chapter 5 of my book. Our conversation went on for a really long time, so I split it up into two parts, and you're about to hear part 2 of that conversation. I hope you enjoy.
This is The Quest Within.
Right, like there's kind of this complicated history too of like in the same way going back to Madarame, there's even before the boomers, like there were these just like the Red Scare, right? Like basically people who were trying to move us in a direction of having a more, pro-social, just like more power for more people, right? Like that's a long and complicated history.
It is.
So basically going into like systems and looking at that in the context of gaming, I just had a few thoughts as far as like one of the things that I think is interesting about gaming over all other mediums is that you have to choose to play the game. Like you cannot beat the game. You cannot do anything without, unless you're playing an idle game, whatever. But you still have to start it up.
Man. Yeah, exactly. Like it's an active form of entertainment, not passive.
Right.
Like watching a movie or something,
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting how like gaming allows us to, experience what it's like to have the odds stacked against us, what it's like to I read like, so I'm someone who's interested in game development and stuff, and it was interesting reading this book. I forget the exact title, but basically just looking at game design and kind of thinking about there's all these different ways that like gaming has these systems, and like the developer creates it with this like intention of, okay, you're going to play it probably in this certain way, and then like as you're playing it, things might happen that only you're like, it's called emergent behavior or gameplay or something like that. But like basically there's just interesting ways that like as you're playing it, there might be a way of playing it that you didn't really like, the developer was never really anticipating. And like I'm sure speedrunning could tie into this for sure.
Totally.
Or like
Yeah.
my favorite is kind of like the swing set glitch in GTA 4 where so basically there's a part of the map where if you go to this swing set and you drive your car into and like park it in the right spot on the swing set and you like kind of like hit the swing set, eventually the car just like pings off. And it's like the type of thing the developers never intended for you to do this, but they never patched it either. So I'm sure they were like, "Well, that's just kind of good old fashioned fun."
That's amazing.
But it's also, just looking at the way that like broader systems can shape gaming. I think one of the things that's really striking to me is the way that mobile gaming is unplayable, specifically because of the way the App Store functions. Like it demands that you make money to even get your app on there. And so it incentivizes ads, and like it's also, the way that it's set up, nobody wants to pay for apps really, which like, you can make arguments that really like coming from the Linux world, there's a lot of programs and applications that you don't have to pay for either, but because there isn't this barrier to entry, because it's open source, because it's not built on the exploitation of, oh, we're Google, we need to sell ads, right? Like there is just the ability for the community to be like, well, okay, we don't need to worry about that cost. We can just package these apps and just like put them in the repositories where people can just download them freely, which has a completely different experience than the App Store experience, which is like you have to pay us money to get in here, which leads to this situation where, one, obviously people want to make money, so you see more games on the App Store, but those games are terrible. Like
They're so bad.
like they're just so exploitative, and it's like you can see that leach into modern PC games because obviously like there's money being made. And so there's all these like exploitative practices like loot boxes and like you could microtransactions.
Purchases, I hate microtransactions. If you couldn't tell reading chapter 5 of the book, they're so stupid, dude. And they're always literally you're paying money for ones and zeros.
That's just
That's how I look at it, and I'm like, why would I ever pay for that?
Right.
It's ridiculous.
It would be one thing if it was just like give me the game up front, but obviously like people are just so cash strapped that like when you see a lower, it's just sad. But it also on the flip side, you see what is possible on a platform like itch where there's low barrier to entry, where folks like myself can just upload stuff. Like I made a Frolf course, a remaster of my hometown Frolf course that you can just play in VR with a controller, however you want to do it.
It's dope, by the way.
Thanks. And it's just like a project that I made out of, just like this kind of love for growing up and like being at this Frolf course, and like it's I don't have to pay to have it sit there on itch, so I don't have to worry about how is this going to make me money, even if people have donated, and that's like very kind. And like I think obviously it's like people who grew up at that Frolf course the same way I did, right? And it's kind of like so basically like the way that our marketplaces or platforms like those kind of influence the way that people like what kind of games we get, right?
It's so true. And that's why a lot of AAA studios these days are making horseshit.
Right, absolutely.
The incentives are different and it really sucks. I have this kind of constant mantra that unregulated capitalism can ruin art. And we're seeing that in real time in the video game industry.
Right, which is also a reason why there's such a big union drive since 2018. And if you're interested, so like at least as far as I'm aware of, like 2018 is kind of the big year. There's like this book that came out, I forget exactly when, but it's called Marx at the Arcade. Someone doing a Marxist analysis of like, which pretty much just means like looking at what is this system, right, that brings us video games. You have people who, have to code and like make the game, the people that you would directly think of as game developers. But then there's the people who have to press the CDs, or at least like in the past. There's people who have to create the distribution platforms. There's people who create like the promo material. There's
writing the manual. All that stuff.
So there's kind of like this invisible network. And this book does such a great job of like examining that. So if that's something that you're like interested in, highly recommend it.
Marx at the Arcade.
Marx at the Arcade. Jamie Woodcock. You can follow them on social media, but that's the author of Marx at the Arcade.
Okay, sweet.
And it's Consoles, Controllers, and Class Struggle is the subtitle of the book. Yeah, when that book came out, I was like, holy shit, inject that into my veins. And it's really just like, I would recommend it.
For sure.
But yeah, so like I think kind of to go back a little bit, you talk about like attitude as an important piece of the puzzle, and we've kind of talked about that.
Right.
Deciding not to be a piece of shit is an important thing to consider, but I think it's also important to recognize like sometimes people make hard choices in the same way that video games always present us. The best games present us with hard choices, right?
Totally.
Where you don't have a very clean cut, like, I mean, again, going back to Balatro, great. Just like, if I use this Joker, well, then I set myself up for this situation, whatever. Basically,
life is gray, man.
Life is gray. And Morgana, someone in Persona 5.
You're not a cat. That's a joke in the game, Anyway.
So she asks, why do people turn a blind eye to misdeeds? And so like, on the one hand, you have to try to address stuff, right? And you have like this individual level stuff that you can do, but that is pretty limited. And there's like this broader system of like, people got to eat. People are like paychecks away from being homeless.
Right.
And so it's like without talking to other people and like understanding the system more, like, like what is your place in it, and like where do you find yourself, and who are the people that surround you,
Yeah,
is kind of like an important part of, like, you've got to map out, like, okay, well, I know things are messed up. And so, like, for
Yusuke.
Yusuke, I always add it,
Yeah,
Yusuke.
you're good.
So like they find themselves with the Phantom Thieves, right?
Yep.
So basically this group of people who in the game world are kind of like, you can kind of explain
It's
that.
the party in Persona 5. It's basically the good guys. Yeah.
Yep. And so um basically, like, you have to figure out who are the people in your life that have, like, going back to solidarity, like, what is that shared common interest? So, like, for ourselves as musicians, there's ways that we can lift up people that we care about and support those folks. And like for the game development industry, there's been, I was referring to the unionization drive that really seems like it kind of kicked off in 2018, as far as I'm aware, where people have, been long exploited, and there's just like terrible working conditions, just like
Right.
all of the horrible things that you see people deal with in society. There's like, those things come up in the workplace, obviously, whether that's just sexual harassment that especially women in game development have to deal with, which is really unfortunate. And just like, there's kind of, especially I got to imagine there's a lot of insecurity around, like, it's so frequent to see layoffs and like,
Right.
so you see all these studios where people are finally recognized, because I think one of the things that used to be true was for these software jobs and whatever, like for developers, it's kind of like this, ooh, like we're special. We get like, basically work feels like a playground. Essentially, they'll set it up like you've got your cafeteria and you've got like these fun little, like,
Oh yeah.
you
So they
know,
can keep you there longer.
right, and like these things that make it feel not like work, in the same way that musicians get this, ooh, I'm special, I'm making music, and I'm like really gonna put myself out there. And it's like, honestly, just kind of sidetracking, one of the most difficult things for me as a musician is the subjectivity of it.
Yeah.
It's just like you don't really ever know, right, when you're like, oh, is this actually good enough? Which is kind of like, it feels like it feeds into like this insecurity about whatever. But
I could talk for hours about that, man.
yeah, I mean, do you want to?
Sure. I mean, like literally I used to feel that hardcore, especially when I was trying to pursue like becoming an artist in the mainstream like EDM and trance scene. The gatekeeping was wild. And I understand why, these labels are businesses. They're running themselves like businesses, and they want a consistent product for their listeners, but it stifled creativity in a crazy way, man. It just absolutely stifled it. And I felt like I was in this metal box for so long because of, the way that it was all set up. And good Lord, like, some of the songs that I listen to that, are from my past, I'm like, yeah, they made the right decision. But other songs, I'm like, no, you got it wrong. Like, this is dope. This like holds up today. I would still like drop this in a set. Yeah, just kind of weird to like look back and see how much subjectivity in that realm of other people shaped what I did and the choices that I made.
Yeah, one of the things I love about the video game music scene is just the acceptance that people bring to it. Right. Where you're just able to explore genres in a way that other people, like, that's not EDM.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, well, too bad.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to make weird video game EDM hip hop mashups. Cool. Like, because I can, like, and I do it for fun because that's what okay. Back in my old life, my career started to become not fun anymore. And it switched to becoming fun when I moved over to VGM. Having fun as a musician, as an artist, should be the focus. If it's not, what in the hell are you doing?
Right. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, it's like, it's just going to show.
Yeah. And I was making terrible artistic decisions because it was starting to become not fun. And producing is probably my biggest joy in life. It's one of them. I can sit and work on music and just be in flow state for hours, and it's like no time went by at all. And I love that about it. But yeah, anyway, so I guess to sort of wrap up my thoughts on that, now I just kind of make whatever I want, and if people like it, cool. If they don't, great. I'll find other people who do like it. Like that's how confident I am in like my sound and the kinds of things I'm producing now. It's because I've been refining this for like 18 years and people are seeming to like it. So
And that's
huzzah.
yeah, that's like one of the important pieces of like creating space to find those like-minded people, right? Like
right.
whether you're game developers forming a union or whether you're a musician who's like trying to find your scene.
Yeah.
And like I think one of the interesting examples that I kind of came up with when thinking about like how do people change systems is looking at like if you look at modders or hackers, like they really dive deep into games and they'll look at like how is this game built, and then like there's different levels of sometimes the developers support that work and they'll put out, hey, like here's how these systems work, here's how you can plug into them. Making it easier for people to change the system is definitely an important piece of that. Or like there's games like GTA 5 where that's not the case and people like
For sure.
it's just so fundamentally like a popular game that like people just take it as this challenge whether or not Rockstar is going to support that, and they will like pick at like, okay, well, um basically looking at what are the open ways that we can plug into the system, and then like you have these tools like Rage plugin hook, which allow other developers to kind of expand on that, right? So you've got like one person who focused on building like this tool that then opens up the game to be, just like changed by other people who then kind of like
Yeah.
it just networks into, well, then you've got, whatever trainers so that people can just spawn stuff in, or there's like these like super elaborate like mods where you become like a first responder, or you can like change how the game plays entirely, um which like translating that into the real world, right? Like there's these different places where we have to deal with them, whether that's the government at large or like your
Right.
workplace,
Yep. Corporations ruining shit. Yeah.
or just like there's parts of your life where you are connected to other people through these, like my coworkers, I would not know them outside of work. Like that's just the reality.
Yep.
And so then you have to kind of like do this process of if you want to change your workplace or keep it the way it is because, new management can come or new ideas, new situations can create, challenges where it's like, oh, we've got to like move things in a different direction. And so like
Right.
having a say in that, then you have to like kind of do this process of, everybody's concerned about it. So it's pretty easy to talk about it. And then, one of the first things that comes up is like, oh, what do you think about like the changes, like
Yeah.
big capital trademark symbol, whatever.
Right.
You go through this process of like building up, well, who can I trust? Who am I on the same page with? And then, there's like broader groups out there, like obviously there's unions, there's even if you don't decide to unionize, there's like ways that coming together can be important to just like if you want to have a say. I think it's Smithfield or whatever, there's like this hog factory in North Carolina like
Right.
way back that unionized, and like they, in order to get something as simple as just like water on the job, they had to just do a sit-in strike, I think, or some sort of like job action where they're like, if you,
What?
right. And so they all just sat down and they're like, we're not moving till we get water. And what do you know? They got water. They eventually like,
Yeah.
I think it's a movie called Union Time that like goes over this
Okay.
story.
God, that sounds interesting.
It's really like
Yeah.
an inspiring story. And it's like when, people can come together like that, there are ways that you can find just like, it's kind of like this complicated process of like, you got to figure out, just like a game, you've got to figure out what is the terrain you're operating on, right? Like if you've
Yeah.
got developers who are like, oh, sure, well, yeah, go ahead and mod it. Like that kind of changes the calculus to where you can be like, well, okay, I mean, if we're allowed to do this, then like it should be a little less tricky, right?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, then you can have more savvy ways of like, oh, well, the union would just ruin our relationship that we have with you and our ability to. So there can be kind of conniving ways
Yeah.
that
Is usually a lie.
right.
That's just coming from, I mean, why do you think there are union busters?
Right.
Like,
It's a
it's
lucrative
because that
industry.
does not benefit the owning class
Right.
whatsoever.
And it's like, again, I kind of go back to, you can find examples of where there's been kind of like business unions that are more focused on getting a good deal for just like the middle layers of, like not necessarily the workers themselves, but whatever, like people can get bought out, right? And so like, just like your government, the more involved you are
Yeah.
in your workplace building that union, right? And so like that's one level of change, right? Like your workplace.
Yep.
That's an important one because like obviously as we were talking about with exploitation earlier, that's just baked into the system. So the more that you throw wrenches into that process, the less leverage that the owning class has
Mm-hmm.
over, like, I mean, basically like that is kind of like the dual nature of exploitation. It's like, well, it sucks, but it also gives you power because if you stop the exploitation and you get together with people, you can change the nature of like, well, okay, maybe we should have the weekend off.
Dude, literally, which again, people died for back in the day, which is just
Right.
wild.
Right.
Well, here's the deal. So like, I think that in order to change systems, you do first have to look at yourself and make a change.
Right. It is an
You have to,
attitude.
start with the man in the mirror, but
It is an attitude.
then beyond that, then you have to take action. You have to find those people to become or to join in solidarity with, right? Rather than try to sell you products over social media, I am proud to say that this episode of The Quest Within is sponsored by Guild, a nonprofit based in St. Paul, Minnesota, that empowers individuals living with mental illness or experiencing long-term homelessness by helping them lead stable, fulfilling lives in the community of their choice. What I love about Guild is that they tailor all their services to their clients on an individual basis, and everything is super customized. They believe everyone is worthy of the opportunity to create a life with joy, community, safety, and shelter. They offer mental health services that cover everything from case management to intensive residential treatment services, which is an incredible alternative to hospitalization, ultimately reducing homelessness and creating stability for their clients. Through their housing support and evidence-based supportive employment services, Guild truly helps folks along their entire journey towards stability and independence. Their holistic, individually tailored approach has changed thousands of lives over the course of Guild's existence. Guild appreciates my nerdy side too. I met their leadership through my work with 2DCon, Minnesota's largest gaming convention, and they were the first organization of their kind to take my work in the gamer space seriously. All of these reasons are why I approached them to form a partnership, and I'm so glad that they decided to work with me to further make an impact. From here on out, I will be supporting Guild with monthly donations and also contributing 10% of my merch sales to further support their mission. If you are able, please consider either buying some of my merch or supporting Guild directly so they can continue to make an impact on the world. Please check out www.guildservices.org or visit any of my social media in order to find out more. Thank you so much to Guild for sponsoring this episode, for what you do, and without further ado, let's get back to it. I want to get your thoughts though on like really big box issues, right? Like the government, right? It's like it feels so hopeless sometimes.
Oh, definitely.
What can we do in order to change that? I think that any kind of action you take, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say any action you take is probably a net positive, but what if it's not? I don't know. Life is gray.
Right.
I think though that it's easy to become apathetic. For
right.
Sure, because
well,
you see this broad, vast thing that it's like, well, what can I do?
Right.
I'm just one person of 330 million. Like, but no, we can do more united than divided. If you find those people, man, you can really make a change. Like the recent Target boycotts.
Mhm.
Did you hear about those? How like
Yeah,
people like literally like stood in solidarity. They're
Mm.
boycotting these big corporations, and they're like CEOs are complaining that profits have dipped in
Right.
40%. It's like, well, yeah, you know, mess
Right.
with us and find out.
Right. Yeah, and it shows that like so I think there's basically it's this complicated question because like for the last however many decades like the social fabric has been eroding both like consciously as a way that like people try to exert power over the broader society, right? So like globalization, the way that corporations busted unions by just like moving jobs overseas,
Yeah,
right?
super tough.
Which you know leaves whatever. Anyway, basically like there's that kind of thing, and then there's like less conscious things where like social media and like these corporate owned platforms that like we kind of interact with each other through now, like we're not really, you know, a lot of the times that I'm hanging out with my friends, it's on Discord now, which, you know, whatever, like it's got its pros and its cons, but that is mediated through like this corporate entity.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's kind of these processes that are happening that are both conscious and unconscious. And I think the main thing that I would say in terms of like how you change them is that you gotta like I think one, you got to just talk to people and like figure out who is even on the same page as you. Cause I think one of the traps, the engagement trap that you can fall into, especially on Facebook, Reddit, like the worst places, are that you get into these arguments and you think, oh, if I yell at someone who has a different viewpoint, I'm just gonna like fix things somehow and get the and like
Nah, you're probably not.
no, you're not gonna fix it. And it's
They're gonna
like
double down. In fact, it's the internet.
right.
That veil of anonymity. And, like,
Exactly.
yeah, so
They'll double down. And so, like, who you need to be talking to is not the people who disagree with you, but the people you agree with. And like, you know, you don't just want to like blindly. I think you got to be a little self-critical, right? Like, you can't just,
for sure.
yeah, you don't want to just, you know, I think you got to be open to the idea that, well, okay, I thought maybe if, you know, whatever, like I take this super hard stance on an issue, like, you know, there can be issues that matter, but you got to find the common language to understand it where like
Right.
you know someone who's left leaning might speak about the issue in terms of like this injustice or whatever, this kind of like abstract, like it's, you know, kind of more lofty and like for those of us who understand maybe like that broader like why this is bad on a moral grounds, that can be maybe appealing to one group of people, but then if you're like trying to bridge the gap for someone who just like has a different sort of like moral system, whatever, you've got to find like different like but like again that's I think the more important piece is figuring out like who agrees with you, and then like you want to come together. And like one of the things I'm trying to do right now, for example, is through Discord, like out of the 2020 uprising here in Minneapolis,
Yeah.
there was basically the people in the neighborhood got together. We had like this kind of like watch network of like a text chain, just kind of like just you know if we saw just Nazis running around in the
Yeah,
neighborhood
yeah.
doing their shit,
Right.
stirring things up, we were like communicating with each other and trying to be like, hey, we saw whatever,
Right.
or like, you know, there's someone who's stirring stuff up. Could we like get people out basically, you know, just so out of that experience, a lot of people came together in the neighborhood. And so now there's like this Discord server where people are connected, and it's like obviously post the uprising, like it's a little different in terms of like the focus is in a few areas where there's like, you know, we're talking about like urban design.
Yep.
There's mutual aid. There's still like the cop watch stuff or just like looking at,
Right.
you know, but there's like different areas, and like it's kind of evolved over time into this you know, there's like certain things that this Discord server is helpful for in terms of just having a local space that isn't next door,
Yeah.
where people can just kind of stay connected. Now, this next process of like, we're in this like crisis moment, right? Where it's like we got to figure out, well, clearly we're being abandoned or outright attacked by our leadership
Yeah.
at different levels. So how do we create a network within our community that brings neighbors together to understand like whatever's going on out there? Like, how do we build the space to have a neighborhood that's taking care of each other and trying
Right.
to address some of the issues? And so we'll see how this process goes. It's an ongoing process, but right now, a lot of like the organizing that I've been doing is figuring out where do like who are we connected to. So there's like people in this server, and a lot of them I don't really know, and so it's like there's this process where we got to figure out like, okay, well, who are the people that are here in this group?
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
How do we look at like there's certain things that this group could be good for, that it can play to certain strengths. Like if it's in the neighborhood, well, obviously issues like urban design, thinking about like, you know, how are tenants doing in the neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's like certain things that are very clear. And then there's other ones where it's like, well, okay, there's other organizations, so maybe we can partner with them. But we have to have these discussions about like what is the point of like this group that we've got? Like what is the shared vision that we have amongst those of us who are in it?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then how do we like relate to other groups that are maybe doing similar work? And then how do we do it in a way that we're not really stepping on toes?
Yeah,
How do we
just
bring people
gaining
in?
synergies. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like there's certain things that if we tried to do them, we would just be burning ourselves out, where other groups have been doing it for a long time,
Right.
where it's like, okay, well, maybe it's just like we just tell people, oh, if you're interested in that, go check out this group.
Mhm.
Right. And I think that's an important thing too, is finding like what is a group, and in your case, maybe you can talk about guild, but
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
is a group that feeds into like when I do this work, I'm getting something out of it. Cause I think a big word right now is mutual aid.
Yeah.
And it can be easy to confuse for charity, where it's just like, okay, if I just like, you know, if I give the homeless person $1, like that helps them, that's good, that's fine. But that's not necessarily the same as like, well, how do I bring this person into like having the power to like change the situation? Because homeless people also have agency, or
Right.
unhoused folks, I guess I should say. But you know, they also have agency, and it's like, how do we find ways that we're not just like, okay, we leave the situation the same as it is? And like it's hard, right? Like I mean, obviously there's nothing wrong with, well, okay, like this person just needs, you know, some cash, some food, whatever, like just give them that, that's
Yeah.
fine. It's more like, well, how do we operate in a strategic way where it's like not just something that I deal with passing on the street, but like where we're actually proactively coming together as a neighborhood
Mhm.
and saying, well, okay, this issue isn't going away. Like there's a role that like, you know, obviously at the city level, there's officials who have some sort of power that they can use to like institutionally provide resources, which like thankfully in Minneapolis, there's like some pretty cool city council members.
Right, right, right.
So it's kind of, you know, like maybe there's a relationship to build there. But then there's also like, well, okay, as people in the neighborhood, like what are some things that we could do that like is within our ability anyway? So that's kind of me going on a bit of
Yeah, yeah.
a ramble.
I love it though. That's
If
everything
you
you
want to
said
talk
was
about like
great.
maybe guild, if that, or like what other, if there's other stuff that kind of comes to mind if you think about this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, yeah, start with yourself, get your house in order, so to
Mhm.
speak, and then find others that you're like-minded with, and then partner with other communities. I think that's like the nutshell of what you were saying.
Right.
And yeah, that's literally, yeah, textbook. I love it. But I want to say make it very paramount that you do find a community.
Right. That's probably the most important thing you can do is like, even if you don't find the perfect community, like a community could be good for you. Uh, like I've found myself doing some organizing in one group where I've been doing a lot of tech stuff. And like at that point in my life, the thing that I was getting out of it is I got to practice these skills that you know, I was thinking maybe I want to go into a tech job. I don't now.
Yeah,
It
got it, got
sounds,
it, got
I
it.
mean, like maybe, but like it would really depend. There's not really many good opportunity, but it's like I was getting something out of that. And it was also building something bigger, right?
Right.
But now I'm in this situation where there's so many other areas that are more directly like like this neighborhood group that I'm talking about. There's also other organizations where like that might change and that's fine, but hopefully what you've done has built something up that more people can take that on who are in a situation where it's like, well, okay, I know I want to get involved around like whatever issues, and like this group really helps me do that.
Yeah.
And then maybe, over time it's like, well, now I'm gonna go check out a new one or something.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because again, impermanence, nothing lasts forever, right? Say
Right.
like who might be in a community for a while and then life changes and then you're in another one. But you gotta find community.
Right.
Social species, we will perish without being social.
Right.
I don't care how introverted you are. At the end of the day, you do need that at some point. Yeah. So you asked about Guild. Like, what exactly do you want to know? So, like, okay, I love how they are a holistic type of organization.
Mhm.
I don't think I really got this across at VGMCon during my panel, but what they do is they offer comprehensive mental health services to their clients. They provide employment services and housing services, and their client base is smaller, right? People at Guild know all of their clients,
Mhm.
which is amazing. I don't think there are a lot of big mental health organizations that can say that, right? Like people will get lost in the cracks, and
Right.
not every mental health service is doing that holistic model. Some of them are just giving the the therapy, and good. It's a good start, but I love that Guild does that because it's holistic, because you need all three of those things in order to feel like you have a purpose and like you're doing good in the world, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, that's a huge reason why I approach them about forming a partnership, is because my content system, I would say, is pretty holistic in nature, and theirs is as well with their services.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Do you have any questions about?
Yeah, I'm curious, like, so when you mention holistic, I think that's also something that, I think about, like, there's kind of like this dichotomy of like, it can be easy to focus on one issue, but that's always tied into the broader issue of like, we live in a capitalist hellscape where like, the reason that we have to address these basically regardless, so like I'm curious if there's ways that like the mental health conversations that you have with folks at Guild, I don't know exactly how like you know how Guild brings that stuff together, but are you having like conversations about like the broader society at all? Are you like making and like obviously I've kind of left out some own details in my own like what I was discussing. So like if
It's
there's
all good. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
well, so I haven't really I don't work with Guild's clients, so
right,
I
and
haven't had that experience, but I have been in boardroom meetings. Like I was
yeah,
in
like
one
the people
yesterday.
who are in Guild, yeah.
Yeah, where I was very adamant about being like, hey, I say some things about the owning class and about A stage capitalism in my book. I want you to know that,
Right,
because I don't want that to be a awkward point of tension, right?
totally.
And it's weird because it's like, am I policing my speech? No. But if I say something too rogue that could piss off one of their donors, and then
Right.
somebody doesn't get help because, do you know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah,
So that's the way I have to think about it.
that's the complicated tension right now is like I think people want to be more vocal than they are, but with the current people in power, it's very challenging when they're so outright targeting
Yeah.
like funding, and they know how to pull the strings in a way that gets people to shut up, which is
Yeah,
right.
which I hate. And honestly, like chapter 5 of my book, which we're discussing right now, before I published the book, I went through that and I rewrote certain sections
Sure,
to make the
totally.
language softer. Like it was intense
Right.
at first, and I still think I got my points across
Yeah.
in an effective manner, right? And if you read this chapter and you deny like the things that I've brought up, if you deny that those are going on, you're just delusional, because they're going on. Like
Mhm.
I'm basically just regurgitating
Uh-huh.
that More Perfect Union article, right? So you can't really argue with the fact that that is going on. But yeah, again, I definitely softened my, my voice a
Right.
little bit in there. And I think it was beneficial in the long run because, again, like, I don't want somebody to not receive mental health care or housing services and
Right.
employment services because I have an opinion. Do you know what I mean?
Right. It is a tricky balance where, like, because I think sometimes there's this sense that, oh, I just got to like say the hard line thing that's like, it's got to be, as radical as possible. And like, that's not always like, I mean, I think so. That's one of the other things that I think is an important piece of organizing is like, while you're having conversations with people, it's figuring out how can you like thread these different people who have these kind of different experiences, how can you thread what their concerns are into a like a cohesive, like universally felt message or demand. And I think Bernie Sanders is a great example of
He's
like,
my favorite. Oh my God.
yeah, like, right. I think there's a reason so many people are showing up to these, against the oligarchy tours, and he's been consistent about universal health care, which is like, I mean, let's just say there's a lot of gamers in the community who have, they really like Mario's brother now, who I see out and about, and
That
it's
is
like,
true.
I think that shows you how universally felt that issue is, and I think, like, that's one of those things where it's like, what we need is a healthcare system that actually works for everyone, because everybody has a story about how they've had to deal with it, and it's been just terrible, right?
I mean, there's no benefit to having a middleman control pricing
No.
and to say, oh, I'm going to cover
still
this,
pay
but not
for it.
that, and you
Yeah.
still have to pay for it. There's no benefit other than their pocketbooks.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
It's such a corrupt business model. It's terrible, man. Like, I don't know how anybody can look at that and be like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Right. Very few
It's
people
like,
do.
Oh, it's so dumb to me, man, especially having gone to Europe so many times
Yeah.
and talking to them about their healthcare systems. They're like, yeah, we have to wait sometimes, but like, I'd rather wait than go bankrupt.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And like, we have to wait here too. So
Right.
like, we have the worst of all worlds. And it's like, I don't know, man. The other thing too is that like, it's very pro business to not have healthcare tied to employment because
Right.
then employers don't have to pay out as much money.
Well,
in
especially
benefits.
smaller businesses,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, yeah, I mean, I talk about, the terrible shit in late stage capitalism all the time, but I don't really even think it applies to all businesses because there are a lot of small mom and pop businesses that are just doing their best to get by.
Right.
Mostly I am talking about the greedy mega corporations that can do better, but they choose not to.
Mhm.
And that's how I've seen the US government be lately. Like, we can do better, but we're choosing not to.
Right.
And I don't like that.
Right. And I think one of the inspiring things that I've heard people say is that, there's like whatever systemic things that, are a little beyond our control, but there's also like the reality that somebody chose for things to be this way,
Yeah.
and people can choose for them not to be this way. But obviously you kind of have to like do this analysis of like, what risks am I willing to take, or like what areas can I affect, and like who can I connect with? And it's like this process of building something bigger than ourselves, right? It's kind of like Katamari Damacy.
Yeah.
You got to build this like giant ball from tiny things until suddenly it's a star in the sky, right?
Hey man, death by 1,000 cuts. I think
Yeah.
I might want to close on that note of like, okay, the way that I wrote my book was death by 1,000 cuts. I would write a paragraph or a sentence every day. That was my bare minimum. And then if I felt like writing more that day, I would write more, but at least I did something rather than nothing. Right. And so I would say that's even this permeates into everything we're talking about. If you're doing something in order to create net positives and to change systems for the better and to, organize and to be in solidarity with your fellow human being, worker, whatever, what gamers, yeah, whatever faction or community you're part of, if you're doing something, it's better than doing nothing, even if you're just doing a little bit.
Yep. And
Right?
you brought up in your book like the way that previous choices you had made in your life led to a situation where you could move from like this very alienating job that you had into this EDM VGM
Yeah.
lifestyle that you got going on. And I think that's an important thing to remember is that like the steps that you take now have, you know, kind of like a Minecraft map. You build something
Totally.
and then like over time it like becomes this big different, you know, like the choices you make now will impact what is available to you in the future. And like, yeah, I think that's an important thing to
And
recognize.
that's legacy, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, dude, Pierce, this was so good. Yeah, thank you again so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having
Do you
me.
want to plug anything that you're working on or
I'm, you know, I am working on like a kind of funky platformer asset pack, whatever, kind of inspired by the original
Okay.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
nice?
It's so hard to find time to work on that shit right
Yeah,
now with the
bro.
world the way it is, and like,
Tell me about it.
so I'm definitely, hopefully, it'll be out by the time this is out,
Yeah, right.
or you know, whatever.
Yeah.
That might be there.
Yeah.
You know, Ludo Loon Studio. You can check out my music.
Bam.
There you go.
There it is. All right.
There it is.
Well, we will see you next time on The Quest Within.
Hell yeah.
This is the quest within.